We're speaking with Paul Jossey, who's the adjunct fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, also a principal attorney at Jossey PLLC, where he specializes in capital raising, also the crowdfundinglawyers.com, thecrowdfundinglawyers.com. We have him here on the program because he's written an amazing article or paper, I would say, very riddled with all kinds of information and great facts. It is a market approach to regulating stablecoins, the futures money at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Paul, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Yael.
All right, so let's get into this. It was a great paper. There's a lot of great points for regulators, which I believe is the principal audience here, not necessarily speaking just to the market makers. But if you could summarize it, why are stablecoins so important in the crypto future that we hope to have?
Well, for a number of reasons. First of all, if you really stop and think about it, this whole industry actually did not exist 5 years ago. Crypto has been around since late 2008 with Satoshi's white paper, but stablecoins were barely a thing 5 years ago, and now they have exploded into a multi-billion dollar industry. They started out as a crypto trader convenience. That's what they still are for the most part, but they are starting to integrate themselves into the larger financial world and financial institutions for benefits for people around the world. You look at any hotspot, choose any hotspot in the world right now, Ukraine, Hong Kong, Argentina, Venezuela. People are using these stable coins to maintain their purchasing power, to hold value for the things that they have, and to not have their property rights and labor stripped away from them from arbitrary government enforcement action. So that's what they are, and I think they have a bright future to become the internet's reserve currency, just as the U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency right now.
Okay, yes, that's I think that's a big flag to plant. Obviously, if you look on crypto world or Bitcoin, Twitter, everything else, I think they would take issue with the part that you mentioned in the paper about how important it is actually to have a strong U.S. dollar, a strong monetary system in the United States. And you say that by helping shepherd in stable coins in a certain way, we can actually guarantee that the US dollar stays strong and that people in developing countries will also have access to these digital currencies or a digital stable coin that will help them safeguard their wealth. Is that about right?
Yeah, so this is a sort of a new phenomenon that's coming about right now. It's been labeled crypto dollarization. If you look at how these particularly Latin American countries, but other countries around the world have outsourced their monetary policy basically from the bottom up because their citizens just don't want to use the currency because their central banks have been so profligate. Inflation goes out the door. Of course, that's becoming a problem for us too. But these stable coins, these dollar pegged stable coins, have been a way for people around the world that are in desperate situations to hold their purchasing power and maintain some property rights in places where they're just not getting it from their government authorities.
Yeah, one thing that I found very interesting is, I've been messing around with stable coins a good amount, used them between the different chains and tried to experiment a little bit. And I saw that Circle, which does have the USDC coin, they recently launched their Euro coin. So I tried to, obviously the US dollar version is on all the chains and people are able to, hop in back and forth between Ethereum or whatever else. The Euro one was only on Ethereum. So I tried to just pick up, 5 euros. Let's see how this works. Ended up with all the gas fees. I had to pay about 40. Granted, wow. We are early, but I'm just wondering, with the collapse of Terra, obviously a lot of lawmakers are knocking on doors and trying to figure stuff out. You do cite in the paper, though, that many of the existing frameworks that have been proposed are just not adequate or realistically give way too much discretion to a lot of the regulators. Could you explain that a little bit?
Sure. Well, the first thing about this Terra USD, I mean, this is the thing that Janet Yellen has jumped on and regulators have jumped on, Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary. to see, show that, oh, this is just so important that we have to regulate these. Well, what's missing here obviously is the distinction between an algorithmic stable coin and an asset-backed stable coin. No one has cracked the code yet, as of yet, to how these algorithmic stable coins that do not have assets can sustain a severe market downturn. The asset-backed stablecoins are a completely different class. Most of the big ones, or I think all of the big ones now, they have their reserves audited. You can see on various schedules, you can see what they have, what the composition of their reserves are, whether they're dollars or commercial paper or something a little bit more risky. But it is disingenuous, I would say, to the extreme, to have these regulators say, because of this failure of Terra USD, which all these venture capitalists bought into and lost a ton of money on, should be the impetus for regulating these stablecoins in a way that basically brings them completely into the existing regulatory financial system of the United States, does not give them the flexibility that they have now. And really, when you start bringing in all of these like anti-money laundering laws and reporting requirements, you really start losing a lot of the benefits here. For the people that I care about, honestly, like these political dissidents in Hong Kong who are, fighting for their political lives against totalitarian regimes. So all of this sort of comes down to, let's look at this from a free market approach. Let's look at this from an approach of, how are these things benefiting people around the world? And let's not ruin that by saying that, there might be someone that launders $100,000 somewhere at some point. So we have to, bring in the Bank Secrecy Act and all of this stuff that is really just unnecessary at this point.
Yeah, that's weighing the risk and rewards. Apparently, politics, we don't do that too often. Yeah, I do like that point. I think it's something that we've seen Alex Gladstein and Human Rights Foundation. They've effectively been able to push this message. They put together this letter as a response to the Web3 technologists who are very concerned about the crypto sector as a whole, or Bitcoin mining. There's all different areas that are attack vectors on this sector. And I think one area that has made this all the more complicated are existing bank regulations. Would you buy into the premise? This is something that Kevin O'Leary, big Shark Tank guy, former Canadian conservative politician, actually, by the way, he almost became leader. He makes the point that if stablecoins are legalized, if we have a good regulatory regime, that will allow the institutions to buy in. And, do we have number go up, moon forever? Not sure, but it will legitimize the sector. Is that something that you would say is true?
Well, first of all, on the Bitcoin mining, I have another paper coming out. I'd love to talk to you about that because that's a huge issue. And so I have definitely looked into that. And so, let's talk again around Labor Day. But as far as the legitimacy of this, let's look at the numbers. This whole industry did not exist 5 years ago, and it has just exploded. So I don't think we need Kevin O'Leary or anyone else telling us that this is not a legitimate endeavor when the market has spoken on this already. And not only, again, it's mostly crypto traders that want to use this to not have to go convert in and out of fiat. But there are many ancillary benefits to this that people are using. So one of the things is we need to bring this in. If we bring this in, we're going to sort of eliminate the competition. But what you're actually doing is if what we do with what the President Biden's working group wants to do is simply bring all of this into financial institutions and make them all banks. So instead of having competition between banks and these crypto stablecoin issuers, you're going to make them all banks, and that's just going to eliminate competition. It's going to be bad for consumers.
That's a great argument, specifically because the whole point that you make is we need to have a free market approach, one that allows the innovators to present their products. And if they fail, if they have an algorithm that doesn't pan out, they're not going to be the go-to stablecoin on many of these different things. And one thing I wanted to bring up, because I did email you about this, are the money transmission licenses, which are very important, at least in the US. If you are a bank or financial institution, you need to essentially get a money transmitter license. You've probably dealt with this a good amount, but one thing that we've kind of proposed with a few state lawmakers is to allow reciprocity, very similar to how we have occupational licensing in a place like Arizona. If you were a nurse, you can just show up in Arizona, you're fine, your license is viewed as valid. You don't have to do additional tests. We don't really have this necessarily throughout the US. And you discussed the various proposals, whether it be a federal license, whether it be a state license that will have various disclosures, but ideally simplifying this whole process so that the innovators can get their products and consumers can benefit from that.
Yeah, well, as a lawyer, I'm very familiar with the different state rules and what you can do in different states. But yeah, getting to your point about sort of how we should approach this, what my paper proposes is basically a three-tier system from the issuer's choice, not mandated or directed into any specific category. But if they want to have a federal license that preempts the state, so they don't have to worry about that, which I think is probably the way most of them would go, then they could do that. But there have been advocates for sort of a federalism system where different states are, where they go state by state. There has been a model sort of state money transmission law, but a lot of the states just haven't, bought into it and agreed to it. There's sort of negative externality issues there. But if they want to do that, they should be able to do that. If they want to be a bank, if they want to be an OCC chartered bank, they should be able to do that. But we should not be forcing them into any one category. And we should, the more choice that they have, the more innovation they're going to be able to bring to the table, and the better it's going to be for consumers. So that's sort of, at the end of the day, that's my whole point of what we should do with this. There shouldn't be, it's not that there shouldn't be any guardrails. We should know for a dollar pegged stablecoin, do they have the assets that they say they have? Right. But it's very easy to do that. You can just post it on your website, have a third party attest to it, and post it on your website at different intervals, and then let the market decide which ones are sort of best. I like DAI myself, which is one really largely based on Ethereum. It's not based on dollar bills, but all of these should be able to compete with each other in the way that best suits them for the market niche that they're trying to gain.
And of course, I could not have a lawyer on who knows a good amount about cryptocurrency without asking about the different designations. There's this kind of battle between whether something specifically like Bitcoin or Ethereum are commodities or securities, and there's all types of lawsuits. I don't know if you're able to talk about that or whatever it might be, but do you see that as just more, this is just making it more complicated? One reason I like your paper is because it is a bottom-up approach, and it's something we can do now. We don't necessarily have to wait for the House and the Senate to put something together over months and months. How do you kind of see that battle playing out?
Well, yeah, obviously this is a huge issue for what the future of crypto is going to bring. I am you can look at me and you will not, or you can look me up on the internet and you will see that I am very, very critical of the United States approach right now, especially with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The current chair has been an absolute disaster for crypto. He's been as anti a crypto person as they could have possibly put in that position. I think really, not to get into politics, but there's going to have to be some kind of political change so we can slow this down, and sort of get some personnel changes in there. There are some good people at the SEC, as I'm sure you're aware. Excuse me. So yeah, there's this battle going on between the SEC and the CFTC. it is absolutely insane for Gary Gensler to sit here and say that Ethereum, after all these years, might be a security. After it's grown and has such importance in the crypto ecosystem. And basically the only one that they're kind of leaving alone right now is Bitcoin, because it is something where who are you going to sue, right? So this is a huge issue, and it has to be addressed. And people like you and people getting the word out about these regulators doing what they're doing is absolutely terrible for the economy. It's terrible for our future as Americans, and it's good for people who want to control us from the top down.
Perfect. Paul Jossey of the Competitive Enterprise Institute, his paper, A Market Approach to Regulating Stablecoin, the Future's Money. Paul, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.